Hi, I'll be refuting the claim that there is inadequate research on the safety of eating meat from cloned animals. The first point made in the argument is that the FDA has inadequate research on any possible long-term effects of consuming meat from cloned animals. The speaker provided the information that the FDA has a moratorium where they have conducted research on cloning animals since 2001 and have come to the conclusion that food from cloned animals is safe. Her argument is that 10 years of research isn't enough time to come to this conclusion. She states that this is only her opinion, however, and doesn't give a specific source to support the opinion. The speaker does cite a source relating to this topic later in the speech, however, and I would like to discuss it here in the first point. The source she provided was given by Chris Waldrop, director of the Consumer Federation of America's Food Policy Institute, who said that cloning is a new technology and we don't think all the science is there. Contrary to this belief, FDA officials, including Stephen Sunlock, director of the FDA Center for Food Safety and Applied Nutrition, say their assessment has been peer-reviewed by a number of independent cloning and animal health experts who agree that livestock cloning is not only safe, but also poses no unique risks to animal health when compared to other assisted reproductive technologies currently in use in U.S. agriculture. The U.S. agency is also not alone in its endorsement of cloning. The FDA's European Union counterpart, as well as regulators in Australia and New Zealand, have made similar approvals. To expand on the topic of concern for effects of eating food from cloned animals, possibly the biggest misconception about livestock cloning is that clones are animals that have been genetically modified and therefore pose risks to the food they create. According to clonesafety.org, cloning does not involve the changing of an animal's genetic makeup, but is an assisted reproductive technology that allows livestock breeders and others to create identical twins of their best animals. Karen Bacha, a spokesperson for the National Cattlemen's Beef Association, also states that what cloning allows some ranchers to do is replicate their best animals to achieve more consistent quality traits. To conclude this point, there has been adequate research on the possible effects of consuming meat from cloned animals that has stated the food to be safe. The second point made in the argument is that cloned animals have numerous health issues compared to their natural siblings. Although the statement is true, it appears to have no relevance in regards to the food chosen to be produced from cloned animals and their offspring, for farmers only choose to use healthy clones for milk production and healthy offspring of clones for meat production. Furthermore, the FDA states that food from healthy clones of cattle, swine, and goats is the safest food for non-cloned animals. And Stephen Sunlock, director of the FDA Center for Food Safety and Applied Nutrition, goes on to say that it is beyond our imagination to even have a theory for why the food is unsafe. The FDA also said that it is not even necessary to label meat and milk from cloned animals and their offspring because they're the same as conventional food and do not pose a safety risk. Also, proponents of cloning technology say it could have a major impact on the livestock industry by providing meat and milk that is better and more consistent. According to the National Academy of Sciences, there is no scientific evidence that cloning is associated with any unintended compositional change that results in an unintended health consequence in humans, and consumers would get better food because the clones chosen by farmers would have increased genetic merit for increased food production, disease resistance, and reproductive efficiency. The third point made in the argument is that cloning animals is an economic drain on our society. However, I do not see the relevance of this point to the claim that there isn't sufficient research on the matter of whether meat from cloned animals is safe to eat. In conclusion, there is enough research provided on the safety of food from cloned animals to conclude that it is, in fact, safe to eat. Thank you.
All right. You state the claims very clearly. Organizationally, you're doing a nice job signposting everything internally, so you're fine there. I thought that you did an okay job on the first point, explaining what some of the problems with the advocate's argument were, a lack of evidence. It was interesting that you took the piece of evidence that could apply to that issue from later on in the speech and brought it up to this point so that you could refute it more directly. And I thought that that was probably a very good decision on your part, because it keeps it clearer and more distinct from where the argument apparently appeared later on. And also, the one thing that I thought was really appropriate is that you analyzed that evidence and suggested that there's not really an explanation about why the advocate's evidence reaches this conclusion. And then when you present your counter evidence on that particular point, you do a good job trying to enhance the credibility by showing that it's a peer-reviewed study, it comes from this organization, that they've done this kind of research, and then you back it up with additional organizations that have offered the same kinds of conclusion. So I think that that's a very strong response on that particular point. On the second point, it seems like you're doing a lot of explanation about what the cloning process is, and I think there are some assumptions being made here by both the advocate and by you that need to be explained a little bit more. For example, that cloned animals that have these kinds of problems that are mentioned would be excluded from the food process. I don't know that that's the case. I'm not sure whether or not there's a safety or not a safety issue on that, so I think that that's a little bit problematic. It's not as specific, but you could also point out that the argument from above would certainly apply in this particular situation, that in the research they've done, even though they've seen these kinds of problems in some clones, they've not seen any problems that would be transmittable to humans and therefore create a particular problem. The biggest problem that you have in the presentation is your delivery. You basically have almost no audience contact. You're going really quickly while you're speaking, and you sound like you're reading the whole time. You just need to talk to us. You've got very good content on the argument. You've done a nice job organizing it and explaining things. But try to talk to us while you're doing those things too. Says the guy, of course, who's looking down and talking really fast, trying to get everything done while, the timer's going. All right, thank you.